When some people think of Alberta, it's not only oil, gas, and the Rocky Mountains that come to mind. How about dinosaurs? The province has more than its fair share of reptilian bones. And if you've ever been to Drumheller, you'll know what I'm talking about. And as the curator of dinosaurs at the renowned Royal Tyrrell Museum, Don Henderson has a unique perspective on the rich history of dinosaur discovery in Alberta. He joins me now over Zoom to share his insights and fascinating stories about these incredible creatures and the significant scientific discoveries made right here in our province. Welcome, Dr. Henderson. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so please maybe tell us briefly about your role there at the museum.
Okay, well, my official job title is curator of dinosaurs.
Okay.
So I get paid to study them, write about them, go look for them, respond to reports for fossils from the public or industry. Um, I also help with our public programs, like our education people, and advise on the content in the galleries and stuff. And get to think, I just get to follow my nose. As long as I any interesting questions related to dinosaurs, I'm allowed to pursue them.
Yeah. Now, have you been fascinated with dinosaurs your whole life?
I've always had a competing interests. I first became aware of dinosaurs when I was in kindergarten in a little book. I actually got that book now, and I was amazed there were these giant things. And I've still got my kids' dinosaur books, but I was also really taken with the Apollo space program in the 1970s when I was growing up. So I've always been interested in rockets and space travel and the past.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems like so many little boys have that interest in dinosaurs, and they have like a big collection and stuff. So I am just curious, being that we're in Alberta, what types of dinosaurs have actually been discovered in Alberta?
We are the best place in the world for the horned dinosaurs, so things like Triceratops and its relatives. More than half of all the known kinds are from this province alone. We've got 5 kinds of tyrannosaur. We've got all sorts of duckbill dinosaurs. We've got armored dinosaurs. The things we don't have are the long necked sauropods and the stegosaurs, the things with the plates on their backs. Um, our rocks are too young for stegosaurs, and our ancient environments weren't good for the giant sauropods. They were still around in the United States, but they never got this far north.
That's so interesting. So, is there a particular, it's like basically, I'm just kind of wondering, is there a scientific reason behind the abundance of certain types of dinosaur fossils in Alberta?
I think it's so different types of animals prefer to live in different types of habitats. Some habitats are good for preserving things, and others are terrible. Like you won't get things in the mountains. Things from deserts aren't very common. Um, Things living right along the shore get bashed up by the waves and lost. But our dinosaurs seem to live on a broad plain to the east of the rising mountains. And it was a good place to be a dinosaur. There was lots of rivers, lots of water, lots of food. And when they died and got into the rivers, they had a really good chance of being buried in sands and muds and staying buried. So it's
Hence all the discoveries.
yeah, and also our climate, um, freeze, extreme freeze thaw, like right now, breaks up rock. Our flash, thunderstorms and really hard rain wear down the rocks. So our climate also really makes it possible to have all these dinosaurs being exposed so often. We can go back to a place like Dinosaur Park every summer and find new stuff that's constantly washing out.
That's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned a number of different types of dinosaurs, but is there a particular dinosaur species that is most unique or most commonly found in Alberta?
I mentioned the horned dinosaurs. Um, so everybody has heard about Triceratops. We've got some Triceratops material, but go back maybe a bit older, about 75 million years ago, and in Dinosaur Park, we've got all sorts of different kinds. Like there's a thing, Centrosaurus is only known from Dinosaur Park, Styracosaurus. There's some other stuff from down near Medicine Hat, Milk River area. Things like Xenoceratops, Coronaceratops. These are all unique to Alberta. And the we also get an awful lot of duckbill dinosaurs. I think it's because they were so big and their bones preserved really well. So we've got an awful lot of big, heavy duckbill things like Corythosaurus. Yeah.
So, what were some of the earliest dinosaur fossils found in Alberta and who discovered them?
Um, the earliest written report we have is from 1871. There was a missionary type guy, Jean Leroux. He was showing dinosaur bones by the Piegan tribe just north of Dinosaur Park. And then he didn't say what they were. He just said there were these big bones in the ground. And then in 1874, or was it 1870? No, 1873, when they were surveying the 49th parallel, um, they had their surveyors and the crews marking the border, but they also had a scientist, George Dawson, and he would leave the party and go and survey. And he found dinosaur bones, 1874, I think, um, near Comrie. He was the best person for the job because he was interested in everything: plants, animals, culture, like the natives, and the rocks and the fossils. So he was the first scientist to really see them. And then, not like a couple of years later, the Geological Survey of Canada started sending people across the West looking for resources like coal and minerals and stuff. And so their geologists, with their better educations, they started finding stuff like at Scabby Butte. Um, Several people went there. And then Joseph Tyrrell found Tyrannosaur bones just near Drumheller in 1884.
Is Drumheller the most significant spot in the province to find it? I know there is a spot kind of down here uh, in southern Alberta as well, like close to the border. But
I
other
think
than,
the best place is Dinosaur Provincial Park, just north of Brooks. So that's where we get the most. We do have lots of bone up here, but they always tend to be broken up and not as good quality. There are lots of dinosaurs here, but it's very rare to find good ones. And I think when the first professional collectors came through here just over 100 years ago, they skimmed all the good stuff. And now we have to wait a few hundred years for erosion to expose it. But I think if you're going to go anywhere to look, Dinosaur Provincial Park is the best. But it's a protected area, so nobody can, not just anybody can go in.
oh, well, they need to change that because it seems like it'd be a fascinating educational tool for sure. Are you maybe able to talk about what some of the current projects are that are going on at the Tyrrell Museum or some of the research that you're involved with regarding
Well,
dinosaurs?
science is competitive, so we have to play our cards very close to our chest. So I can't tell you exactly what we're working
Can't
on, but
divulge all those secrets, huh?
I can tell you, yes, there's two of us working on dinosaur stuff. We've got people working on turtles and fishes and plants and mammals, and we've got visiting researchers who come to the museum just about every week. We've got people from all over the world coming here. So we really have established ourselves as the place to come if you want to look at rocks and fossils from, say, the last 20 million years of the time of dinosaurs.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So you mentioned a little bit about how the conditions and the climate and the environment in Alberta are kind of a really go-to spot to find these bones. So a little bit about how have the geological conditions in the province contributed to the preservation of these fossils?
Well, the Rocky Mountains haven't always been there. They started developing maybe about 100 million years ago, and rocks and little microcontinents are squishing up against the west side of North America. The rocks get lifted up, and it's the same time they're getting lifted, the weather, the wind and the rain is wearing them down. And there's all this sand and mud being transported east and northeast in these rivers. And if it wasn't for the rising mountains, we wouldn't have the sands and muds to preserve the fossils. And even after the dinosaurs went extinct, the mountain building still continued and the land was being uplifted. So the rocks are getting closer and closer to the surface. And then over the last 100,000 years, we've had the Ice Age, which ended about 14,000 years ago. And when that ice melted, it melted really quick, like maybe in a few centuries. And it cut in the major rivers like the Red Deer River, um, and cut down into these soft dinosaur bearing rocks. And it's because of that the ice, if it wasn't for the Ice Age and the massive meltwater, those dinosaurs would still be deep underground. So it all has to work together. You've got to have the dinosaurs, you've got to have them being preserved, you've got to have the right climate, you've got to have that Ice Age. If we didn't have any one of those, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Oh, that's absolutely incredible. What a history lesson there too, as well as a science lesson. It's so interesting. Maybe share with us the most significant discovery in Alberta and why it was so significant.
Well, there's a whole bunch.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Going back to like Joseph Tyrrell's discovery of Albertosaurus, that was a tyrannosaur and it was discovered like 20 years before Tyrannosaurus. So we knew about tyrannosaurs long before Tyrannosaurus came from Montana. And we've got down Devil's Coulee, down near Warner, we've got the Hipparchosaurus nests and eggs of these duck-billed dinosaurs. From 2010 or 2011, we got the armored dinosaur from Fort McMurray, Borealopelta. That was a huge surprise. And it's the best preserved armored dinosaur in the world. We've got all the armor in place. We've got skin on the outside. We've got stomach content. It's so well preserved that all the armor is in place. We can't even see the skeleton. We're not moving the armor. That's just three of the major things we've got.
Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. Besides Alberta, what are some of the best spots in the world?
Well, very similar dinosaurs are just south of the 49th in Montana. Another really famous place is for large dinosaurs is in East Africa, a place called Tendaguru. That's much older, Jurassic Age. South coast of England is actually where the science got started in the early 19th century. They've got early Cretaceous dinosaurs. So the same age as the thing we got from Fort McMurray, but very different animals. China is a big place now for dinosaurs from older than ours. Lots of things preserved with feathers. But actually, there was actually a feathered dinosaur found just across the river from the museum here in the Red Deer River Valley. So we now recognize feathers here. There's all sorts of South America, Argentina, is where they get the biggest things ever known, like Argentinosaurus, which might weigh 50 tons, which is just crazy.
Yeah. And would you say, like, when comparing climates and environment, is it similar to kind of holding that preservation? Is that why we're discovering it in those areas?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can only find them where they get preserved. And the best place to be preserved is on these floodplains with broad rivers and lots of sand and mud. There are some ancient desert locations, like in Mongolia. It's been desert there for a very long time. But you need flowing water with sand and mud to preserve them. So all these environments I just mentioned, they're all very similar, very flat landscapes, lots of water, lots of animals living there who had a really good chance of being preserved after they died.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff. I can see why you went into it. What's the most exciting part about the work that you do at the Tyrrell Museum?
I call them the regular surprises. Every year we get a call from the public or some industry, it's like Fort McMurray or construction sites. They bump into something. You cannot predict where they're going to come from. Every year we find something. So we're out there looking ourselves, but there's these surprises that come up because we're not digging big holes. And every year there's something interesting.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you say you're not digging deep holes, how far down are they actually being located?
Well, if you think in Fort McMurray, they're digging this giant hole in the ground, many tens of meters deep. We would never see that because we only look at the surface. You don't dig. You just look at the surface when you're prospecting. Look for a little trace of bone at the surface, and maybe there'll be something. Or same with digging foundations or roadworks. Again, they were putting in a new bypass just south of Fort McMurray, no, just north of Fort McMurray. We got an amazing marine reptile, a plesiosaur, from there. Or just south down near, actually south of Lethbridge, the Corite mine where they're mining the gem quality ammonite shell. We got a 2007, we got this amazingly complete giant plesiosaur with 76 neck bones. It's got the most neck bones known of any animal. And that was a total surprise.
So fascinating. We could talk about this all day, but it looks like we're about out of time here. But thanks so much for joining me today, Don. Appreciate having you on.
Well, you're welcome.
Absolutely. Don Henderson is a curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta.